Hello and good evening. We are back to conduct our workshop on the Syringe Service Programs Ordinance. And counselors, thank you for joining me here. Director Connor, we appreciate you. Staff, our friends in the audience. So we're going to have a discussion about the ordinance and I guess what we'd all like to see in it, and try to build some consensus to influence the first. Madam Clerk, we're still on the first reading, correct?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Yes, and then I anticipate a wide-ranging discussion this evening, councilors. We've been here many times before talking about this, so if we can. If it pleases the council, I think we should try to avoid repeating ourselves or reiterating things that other councils have already said, and refrain from personal attacks and speak when recognized. And my hope is to conduct ourselves in such a manner that we get out within a reasonable time frame. We shall see. Director Connor, is there anything you'd like to add before we kick things off?
I just have a few remarks that I wrote down. If you wanted me to start with that, or we could just go with.
Are those long remarks, Director Connor?
No, they're. I have pages, but absolutely.
Director Connor, please proceed. We appreciate you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and councilors. I just wanted to reiterate the purpose of tonight's workshop is to gain clear and final direction on several key policy points within the proposed SSP ordinance. Over the last few meetings, the council has engaged in a robust debate on these items. Our goal, as you already said, Mr. Mayor, is to not debate or re-debate the entire ordinance, but really make the firm policy decisions on these specific topic items that you guys have been debating. With your direction this evening, staff can prepare a final draft of the ordinance for a public hearing and continue the first reading at next week's regular city council meeting. I can go over the four primary items, but I have a feeling you guys have already know what they are, so that's all I really wanted to just put out there.
Excellent. Thank you, Director. I guess we're going to start things off with Councilor Gallant.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to do something a little different. Every time we say we have 4 items, somebody has a 5. I want to start right at section 2241. If nobody has any problems, we put an X in it and we continue on. If we do item by item, we'll get to the 4 items that concern us, and then we won't backtrack once the 4 items are done when somebody says, well, oh, by the way, I want to know about this. I prefer to head in that direction, and I think it'll be a much quicker pace.
Further thoughts from Councilor Chittum, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I like Councilor Gallant's suggestion. However, I, as you know, have a number of what I would consider minor, and I hope you all would consider minor edits to this ordinance. And I'm afraid if we go section by section, we'll get bogged down and the comma's in the wrong place and this word is misspelled. I think we really ought to stick to substantive, the 4 issues. And I would like everyone to be reminded of what those 4 are. So if Director Connor wouldn't mind taking the stage again, I'd love to have him do that, Mr. Mayor.
Director Connor, if you'd please.
Absolutely. The 4 items that have been the topic of discussion over the last several months is the one-to-one exchange requirement, the number of licenses, the zoning restrictions, and the allowance for mobile services. Those are the 4 that I have that have been the most contentious topics. If I'm mistaken, please let me know.
Thank you. Councilor Chittum, was that all for now?
Thank you. Yes, Mayor.
Councilor Harriman.
Thank you. I like the suggestion, but I do worry that a lot of the pieces of this ordinance refer to each other, and if we were to proceed strictly in a linear fashion, we wouldn't be able to effectively have a debate on it. But yeah, I don't know what other alternative to provide, but it did seem at our last meeting that we all seemed, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we all seemed pretty much in agreement that we trusted the current SSP that we have in town, and I think what we need to do at this meeting is to figure out how we're going to allow them to meet the need in the city, while also balancing other concerns that neighbors may have.
Councilor Najin.
Just real quick, number one, what were the four? So we had one-to-one exchange, zoning, mobile units, and what was the other piece?
Number of licensees.
Number of licensees. Okay. I would just proffer up real quick that I would like to touch on the good neighbor policy as well. I mean, we never even got a chance to talk about it, so.
Anything further at this time, Councilor Najin?
Nope, that's it.
Councilor Sol.
I actually would like to go one at a time. The license require, how many licenses, and then into the ratio, and then zoning, and then mobile. I don't think that we've all discussed it at length. I don't know if anyone has changed their mind, but I mean, I'm ready to say I'm good for one license and get that taken care of, and then move on. So that's my suggestion.
Back to you, Councilor Najin.
One of the things that came up, and I know, so I'm just going to mention something that one of the counselors had brought up, who had concerns about one provider being able to operate in two separate locations. And so basically, if we're basing the licenses on physical locations versus basing it on operator that would be permitted to hold two physical locations within the city, I think that would satisfy one counselor who possibly was, and also to write in that it doesn't preclude the possibility of applying for a mobile license, but that might move one counselor who had the opinion that that they could not support just one provider if it was limited to one location. And coming to another point in that, Councilor Gallant had brought up hospitals, and I do think that it may be interesting that we consider, one, exempting hospitals from the licensing requirement, and then two, possibly allowing the zoning to expand to allow in the footprint of a hospital an SSP. But I just wanted to put those things. I'm trying to figure out a place where we can all compromise, because I heard lots of opinions on lots of sides. So,
Councilor Longchamps.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to definitely just start with the four topics that you mentioned, and starting sooner than later would be great.
We're proceeding that way. Councilor Harriman, yes.
Yeah, I did want to also bring up the licensing fee that's in there, and I think that's just something that we haven't discussed yet, and something that is a little concerning given the financial implications of it, and I just wanted to make sure we could, it could only take a few minutes to discuss, but if we could discuss that tonight.
Director Connor, are you getting some notes here? Or are you, I see you're taking notes.
Taking notes, yes, sir.
Love it. Thank you.
Lots of them.
Back to you, Councilor Gallant.
So let's just move to section 22-497 and go A through the rest of them, which covers everything we just discussed. Under admin, correct? So that's where the licensing is kept? So we can start there, and if nobody has any questions, and we get to a point that we want to discuss, then we can discuss that particular point.
Councilor Longchamps.
I'm just wondering if we could turn the heat down.
We have made efforts towards that.
I shut it off as best we could, so. that's
Sorry.
what we have. They just turned the heat on today, so it's been a little warm in here.
Thank you.
We appreciate your efforts, Deputy Administrator O'Malley. Councilor Chittum.
Thank you, Councilor Longchamp. At our last meeting, there seemed to be some councilors who felt that there was a connection between the license limitation of one-for-one exchanges and the number of licenses that were issued in the city. And it felt to me as though that were a touching point, and that if we could resolve that concern, I heard Councilor Gallant, I fail to see the connection, but if anyone does see the connection, there is a connection. in your minds. I would like to get that resolved and see if we can do what's called horse trading to figure out, are we going to limit the number of needles per visit, or are we going to limit the number of SSPs allowed in the city, or both? I would obviously prefer not both. So if we could explore those two items, those are two of the four that Director Connor indicated were the big ones, and I agree. I think those are perhaps the largest issues. And if we could concentrate on those two together, if you feel there's a connection in your mind, that's fine, draw them together, but I would like to see us figure out, are we going to limit the number of needles and or the number of providers within Lewiston?
I appreciate that, Councillor Chittum. Yes, Councillor Harriman.
Thank you. In that, I guess in that spirit, it seemed like we were okay with the current provider we have last time. And so if we were to limit things to that one provider, I think we do need to at least allow for 2 locations, which, if we're tying the license to the physical location, that would mean allowing at least 2 licenses, but only the one provider, and then allowing them to follow the guidelines that they're currently following and the best practices as they see fit to balance both the financial aspects and the need in town. It seemed like that was where people were last time, and I just wanted to put that out there as an option and see what others think.
Councillor Longchamps.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. We trust the provider, and I think maybe a second license with that provider would make sense. Thank you.
Further, Councillor Nagy. Did you have your hand raised, Councillor Nagy? We're all waving to each other up here. It's like kumbaya. Councillor Sol.
Yes, I agree with that. The one license, as long as the second location was within the zoning. But I still, even though I know that we all trust Spurwink and with good reason, I still would like to see some sort of a cap on, because we've had conversations where if somebody comes in and says, well, it says 1-to-1 and I brought in 500 needles, they don't want to have to give out 500 needles. And I know CDC has the 100, but that's for newcomers, not everyone. So I'm not sure how that works. That's what I've been told, that it's for new. So I'm not sure. That's why I just want to make sure. But I still think that a cap would be good, like maybe 30. I'd like it to be lower, but I'm having a feeling that might be a little unrealistic. So, but that's my opinion.
Councillor Harriman, back to you.
Yeah, just a couple of things to respond to that. So the 100 cap is per visit. It's not only for new people. And then there's also no requirement that an SSP provide the number of, if somebody brings, even if they bring in, say, 30 syringes, there's no requirement that the SSP gives them 30. It's up to them as to how many they give out. So I think that it's fine to just let them use their judgment. Their syringes aren't cheap, so they're not going to be just distributing as many as people may ask for. They're going to use their best judgment, and I think that's fine to trust them to do that.
Councillor Chittum.
Thank you. The latest data that's been reported to CDC indicates that Spurwink has distributed 104 needles for every needle that they've collected. And so the 1-for-1 would be an unnecessary restriction, but I think in Spurwink's professional judgment, the freedom to issue more needles than received is a necessary component of the whole harm reduction aspect of this. I think we are nearing agreement that we would not have a cap on the number of needles exchanged. I'm sorry, we would not have a limitation or a ratio on the number of needles exchanged. The state, I am informed, already has a cap, and I'm comfortable with limiting the number of licenses as long as we can recognize that there could be more than one location under a license as a satellite of sort. That would provide Spurwink, I think, the opportunity to get through, and we could reevaluate the limitation on the number of licenses issued after a period of trial, so we could figure out just exactly how well Spurwink could accommodate the entire city, the needs of the whole city. So I would love to have, and I think I'm getting the sense that the council as a whole agrees to no limitation on the number of needles per needle on the exchange rate, and a limitation of one license as long as there could be two locations. I'd love to get a thumbs up, thumbs down on that, so that we can pull those two major components together.
Thank you, Councilor Chittum. Councilor Gallant.
Thank you, Mayor. First and foremost, I work with Spurwink, and I know they do a tremendous job. However, if they weren't here, we'd be having the same conversation. If we had an unknown, had none in the city, and we're developing our own. I understand that they have a great program in what they're doing, and my hat's off for that, and I know that it works. But we're writing something based on an unknown, not giving credit to something that's already running and happening. And our decisions be made as a council for our citizens based on an unknown, licensing a brand new thing, just like when the marijuana thing came along. Not because we already know we have a great known provider sitting in front of us who works and takes care of things for us. I think some of you just are wrapped around Spurwink. And quite frankly, I think that's wrong. Yes, they're going to get the SS. I mean, we know that they're going to meet all the criteria. However, when you're thinking based on only a sole thing, and you're not thinking about the big picture, we tunnel vision. Oh, this is what they do, and we think they do a great job. If they weren't here, what will we be deciding? Will we be deciding 100 needles if we didn't know any better? Just because of state? If that's the case, let's just accept the state's SSP, get rid of all this trash right here, and move forward. What's the purpose of having a local one if we're going to have to bow to the state or federal government? We're here to make decisions for the city of Lewiston. That's what I believe needs to happen. And we're very fortunate we have a qualified provider. 6 months ago, we thought we had two, quite frankly. And that blew up on our face. So when you're thinking of what you want to have done, please remove Spurwink from the equation and say, if we didn't have an SSP, what do we need to have for our city that might work to move forward? That's what I would ask you all to think about before we do a thumbs up, thumbs down on how many you want to give to somebody. Thank you.
So, thank you, Councilor Gallant. Listen, we all know how we came to be talking about this, and this ordinance is providing guardrails in we just talked about the good neighbor policy, as well as zoning requirements and so on and so forth that we didn't have before that will, address some of these issues. And I think that makes sense. We can certainly not have, I am not in favor of just having an SSP, just anywhere in town. I'm in favor of zoning requirements. I'm in favor of good neighbor policy. It needs to, I'm in favor of, inspections by the, inspections by the city. But I guess what I'm not in favor of is, telling SSPs like how to operate. We've already, the state's providing guidance for that. Councilor Longchamps?
I said it.
Councilor Najin?
So one thing I had proposed during the last meeting, and it didn't carry much water, but I'll put it forward again, was, and speaking to Councilor Gallant's point, would be if we approved more than one operator in the city, that we would have a moratorium in place. That would be renewed. But I think that we're talking about the same thing either way. We can come back in 6 months to propose amending the license ordinance if we find out that we need another operator in the community for whatever reason, or placing the moratorium as a second amendment. So I would be comfortable. I just wanted to bring that up because I acknowledge the concern that if we're banking on just one operation, but the reason, and just to say this, part of this is a response to a situation that happened in our community, right? So it is kind of regressive. It's not progressive. It's regressive in certain points. And so I just want to acknowledge that, and then also say that trust is huge. And so I know it's not a Spurwink ordinance. I'm talking about building relationships with service providers that are answering public health concerns. That's all. So maybe we go to the thumbs up.
Councillor, well, before we do that, Councillor Chinham.
The question on moratorium, I think we're advised that that's an entirely separate process. We can't sort of dovetail that with this one. It would have to be a separate process altogether. I was initially in favor of that until I learned that it would add yet another level of complexity to this. I'm not uncomfortable, as I said before, with limiting to one license, with the understanding that that licensee, whoever it is, should it choose to, could open a satellite location with the same operational team, the same philosophy, the same good neighbor policy, et cetera. Again, I think we're in agreement that if we can limit the licenses to one with that proviso, that we need not go into an exchange limitation and say that you must not give out any more needles than you collect, that the one-for-one is not a restriction that the city should impose on an SSP.
Councillor Longchamps.
Yes, could we ask Spurwink a question since they're here?
Yeah, I don't see why not.
Okay. Is there anyone that could provide a number, and you may have already answered this in one of our other workshops, as to how many needles that you think are acceptable or are needed for an individual when they come in?
If you can please go to the podium.
Ernestine Peralt from Spurwink. Can you repeat your question?
Yeah. So basically, I'm just asking if there is an acceptable number that you would typically give to someone. Is there a certain number that you give out to each individual that comes in, or is it really based on the individual and their circumstances?
It is based on their individual circumstances. We have conversations about what their use is, what it looks like, how many times they're using, and also what they're using, because the shelf life on drugs that are out there in the streets now is much shorter. A person can start withdrawing after 30 minutes. So, their ability to be able to continue to use clean syringes throughout a day's use is critical for their risk and safety.
So do you have a number, though, roughly, which you typically give to clients?
I wouldn't say that there's an average. I wouldn't speculate to kind of give a number, because it's going to leave a bunch of people on the table. So we like to have conversations, customize it for what makes sense for them, use the science behind it, use regulations, guidance, all of those things, and clinical experience to base our judgment at that point.
If we had to put a number on it, what would be an acceptable number to give to clients if you didn't do it individually, for that specific person?
I wouldn't feel comfortable putting a number on it.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. I do think it's important to have a cap. I'm not exactly sure what that number is, as I shared before, but I do think it's important. I think continuing to just hand out hundreds of needles at a time, for me, is not acceptable. And I'd like to see a cap. I'm not sure that we'll actually pass that with this council, but that's where I stand with that. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Chittum.
Just a clarification. We're talking about two different things. One is a cap on the total number of needles that can be given out over a period of time, a weekend, a day, or whatever. The other is the ratio of needles that a client would bring in. So the exchange ratio and the cap, I think, are two different numbers, and you referred to a cap.
Yeah.
Is that what you meant?
Yes, I'm saying I think there should be a certain amount that goes out to each individual client. Not a one-for-one, a cap, whether it's 25, 30, so that's why I was trying to ask Spurwink for a number. But I understand that you couldn't provide that.
Yes, Councillor Chittum, back to you.
Just so I understand, when you say a cap, a certain number going out, you're not referring to a ratio of needles coming in to going out. You're referring to an absolute
That's right.
limit. Okay.
You heard that right,
On
yes.
a daily or weekly basis.
Exactly.
I don't want to put words in Ms. Peralt's mouth, but I do think that it's very difficult for her to give you a number because of the varying circumstances. You have users who are using multiple times a
know.
day, and you have people who are coming from quite far distances to go to, I think, where the SSP, Lewiston is the SSP, the nearest one is, if I'm not mistaken, in Wyndham. So I'm sorry, I could be corrected, but it's not next door in Auburn. It's not in Greene. So people are coming from far away, which means that, they may be looking for a 5-day supply. So I think that gets to the heart of why it's difficult for her to answer the question, because it is on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, no, I understood that. Thank you.
Councillor Najin.
I would just reverse that real quick. If a Lewiston resident is, I don't know, maybe going up to Patton to go visit with relatives for a week, right? I don't want to be the service provider for the entire region, and it has to be right-sized for our community. And other communities around us need to do their job. So ultimately, I would love to see a situation where, I'm just making a point that we don't want to be a regional service provider. We have a problem in our city that we need to address. And at some point in time, maybe we'll have a discussion with Auburn with what they're doing with their moratorium and how they're thinking about moving forward. But we need to take care of us first, is just my opinion.
Thank you, councilors. So I guess, yes, how are we feeling about limiting it to, and are we talking about limiting it to one provider and then revisiting this in 6 months, or Councilor Najin?
Can we just ask really quickly for you, would it be easier in the ordinance language to say to limit to one provider with up to 2 licenses, or would it be easier to say one, 2, you know what I'm saying? Like, what's the wording look like for you?
So, good question. I had 4 options that I was hoping to get a thumbs up, thumbs down on you guys. Option A was no limit or more than 2 licenses. Option B was maintain the maximum of 2. Option C was to reduce the maximum to 1, and then the option D was the hybrid, the one that you spoke to, which was the 1 license with up to 2 locations for that 1 licensee. I haven't looked at the actual how to write it, but I can't imagine that it would be too difficult to add that, that new language. And obviously, we'll consult with the city attorney who helped draft this, extensively.
So if I'm, or sorry, Councilor Najin, did you?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it's one license, 2 locations, or 1 provider, 2 licenses, and I think it's probably going to be 1 license, 2 locations. So.
Excellent. And then, we could just, have that be the ordinance, and if the council, in consultation with public health professionals, decide that another licensee is needed in the city, then we could amend the ordinance at that time. Is that what the council's thinking? Or do we have consensus for this idea then? One license, up to 2 locations. We feeling good? Looks like a majority of us. Councilor Glant, your question, yes.
Second location cannot be mobile or can be? We didn't clarify that.
The mobile license is going to be handled in a separate ordinance. So what I was looking to have it specify is that if you're a holder of a physical license, it wouldn't preclude you from being able to apply for a mobile license. Because we know the mobile license piece is coming, and hopefully it will not take this long. But it's important to meet people where they're at to have that piece. So, yeah, the physical locations would be two. Mobile license is another ordinance.
Physical location meaning brick and mortar.
Correct. Because unfortunately, this is something that I learned that I don't know if everybody knows, but the exchange is actually tied to a physical location. And so you cannot actually do exchange unless it's tied to the physical location, and that applies to the mobile location as well. So like, for instance, you can't do home care services or at one point in time during COVID, there you could do mail order because it was what it was, but that provision passed, like sunsetted. There are provisions that may change that guidance in January, but we're not there yet. So,
Thank you, Councilor Najin. Does that answer your question, Councilor Glant?
Yes.
Okay. So did you get all that, Councilor? Sorry, Director.
I believe I have it, but is it possible just to get a thumbs up from everybody or a thumbs down, just so I know? On that one,
yeah,
on the
we
one
had a
license with up to
majority.
2 locations?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
I was looking. Councilor Chittum, yes.
Yes, so we've answered half of the equation. The other half is a limit on the number of needles that can be distributed on a ratio basis.
Yeah, I would like to see, right now, what is in the ordinance
So
as
right
it stands
now,
right now?
Right now, I believe on the table, and the clerk can correct me if I'm wrong, it is to remove, the motion is to remove all language around 1-to-1. That'll be that's what's on the table right now. And
Yeah, when we pick it back up next Tuesday.
Correct.
But as the ordinance stands right now, yeah, it's not in there. The language
is
is
in
not
there.
removed there.
it's not removed, it is
Right,
in there.
yes,
The 1-to-1 is in there as it stands right now.
Yeah.
No, if I could clarify.
Sorry.
Thank
On
you.
September 16th, the council voted to remove all references to one-to-one.
That's right. Yeah, 1-to-1
And then
is
at the
not in
October
there.
7th meeting, it was voted to reconsider, so then that motion is now back on the table, which is to remove the one-to-one, to basically re-vote that motion.
Right.
And then that's what was postponed to next Tuesday night. So at this point in time, the one-to-one language is not in the ordinance for first passage, first draft.
Okay, thank you for all of that. Councilor Najin.
I would be comfortable with the ordinance remaining silent on the number of needles to exchange and just deferring to the organization's own standard practices and/or CDC guidance. So basically, at this point in time, if we set any number that we set, feels like an arbitrary number, and so, and I also think the CDC number is probably somewhat arbitrary, but maybe there's some science behind it. I'm not sure. I would hope so. But that I would be comfortable with the ordinance remaining silent on that portion of it.
Councilor Harriman.
I'm in agreement with that, and I think that in the future, if we were to, if we're to determine that we need more than one provider, then in the case that we open up the ordinance to more than one provider, then we can re-look at that, re-examine that, and see if that needs to be, if there needs to be a ratio at that point.
Councilor Najin.
Just really quickly too, we don't know what's going to happen again. So like, let's say in January, the state guidance is we go back to 1-to-1, right? Like that's what the state says. If we specify anything within this ordinance, then we have to go in and change it, as far as that's concerned. If the state says they're going to cap it at 50, right? But we wrote some number in here, leaving it open, I think helps as far as modifications to the ordinance piece as well.
Councilor Salt?
I still think it needs to have a cap. For the simple reason, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or next year. And like Councilor Glant said, we can't keep doing this around Spurwink. This can't become a Spurwink ordinance the way, like in the beginning, it started to become, everyone was calling it a COSI ordinance. It needs to be a Lewiston ordinance, and we need to be prepared for whoever might come in at some point. So I still think there needs to be a cap, and I'm not sure what that cap is, but, and I think it helps the provider as well, that they can say, no, I'm sorry, we can't give you that many needles. They can't afford it, they don't want to be sending that many, because then they don't see them as often. So I would like to propose a cap, and I will start at 30. I don't know, I really don't know. I would like to have some input from the other counselors, but I still think there should be a cap.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this at length, so I want to go to like a thumbs up, but anyone else want to chime in before we do that? Councilor Glant?
You know, I still roll back to prior to COVID, what the rules were then and how it was handled. And I think some of the rules we deal with now are post-COVID that never got changed. And it's hard for providers to go backwards, quite frankly. They've been given a system, and it makes it easy, and they like it, and they work with it. I don't know that our job here is to mirror the CDC, the state, or federal government, anybody of those people. Our job is to figure out what we think might be a good way to move forward, and like you said, it can be amended. So the same logic of adding another provider could be if we limited the amount of syringes and we come back in 90 days and talk to the provider and they say it's an undue burden on them to do this, and they tell us why. I mean, Councilor Chittum mentioned that the average person got 104, is that correct, needles?
Councilor Jim?
Yeah, my statement was that for every 100 needles that Spurwink collected, they'd issued 104.
Okay.
So that was a 1.04 to 1 ratio based on the data as of October 2024.
So I guess my question would still roll back to if they had 50 to 1, vice the current 100 to 1, and a weekend pack that give people additional ones, or call it a vacation pack. You know, people going off to Patterson or wherever they might go and need to take extra needles with them. In that situation, you know, if in 90 days we find out it don't work, we're going to know. We're going to know if it's an undue burden on the process or the system. And at the same time, lessons learned, we might find out it works. And that people don't, you know, back in 2019, I just looked up the data, it was between 36 and 49 needles per individual usage. So we're giving them double that. And I worry about contact. You know, I don't work in industry like they do, for sure, and they're definitely the professionals. But I work with people with drug and alcohol conditions, and I know that if he had 100 needles, they're not going to go talk to anybody until they need a needle. I just know that in my heart. And for me, the more contact and the contact they're being offered through SSPs is extremely valuable. And that's why I think some kind of a limit to begin with would be along that line for me to feel comfortable.
Thank you, councilors. I'm afraid we're going to just be repeating everything we said at previous meetings. If I can get a thumbs up or a thumbs down for keeping, Madam Clerk, so right now 1-to-1 is out of the ordinance, correct? For keeping 1-to-1 out of the ordinance, if we can just get a thumbs up for that. And we have a majority. What were the other two items, Director Connor?
The zoning locations and the mobile
If we can do zoning first. Counselor Najin, I liked what you said. You were talking about perhaps exempting hospitals should they decide to run. I guess you want to talk about that for a second?
Well, just the New Hampshire healthcare system model actually ties the SSPs in with their regional healthcare systems. And so in Maine, the DHHS oversees licensing for medical facilities. What's the term? Did we go over that?
No, I don't think we did.
Okay. There's a... what I'm saying is that if a hospital system decided to offer that service, I don't think we would want to preclude the hospital system from being able to do that. And so, again, I guess we could come back and issue a new license, or we could say if you're at this moment St. Mary's or
Central Maine.
Central Maine Medical Center, that you would be exempt from the ordinance. I don't know which way you'd want to work that, but if we want to do that. I just brought it up because I know Councilor Gallant was concerned about it. There's a model that works in our neighbor state, and so I just thought it was something to bring forward in that discussion. And then also, we had discussed, just to tack on, we're going to come to it, but the zoning piece, allowing, so like for instance, if the second location was in the footprint of a medical office building, because right now the zoning precludes the hospitals, I believe.
Correct.
That's all.
Thank you, Councilor Najin. Director Carter, can you pull up the map here? If you got it handy. That's something that I could support and get behind, Councilor Najin. Further thoughts on zoning as the map's coming up here? Councilor Solt?
I could support the hospitals as long as it was actual hospitals, not doctor's offices, dentists, any medical. It would need to be just the hospitals. I would support that.
Councilor Harriman?
Thank you. Yeah, I would also support that. I think we'll have to look at what exactly is the definition of a hospital, because I know both of our hospitals have sort of satellite locations, but I think that could serve at least some of the need, especially downtown, because with the way the map is currently written, there's really nothing downtown that's available. So I think especially Central Maine, but also St. Mary's in its current location would definitely help with the need that's downtown.
Comments on that or other zoning? Yes, Councilor Gallant.
I do support the hospital. I brought it up. I guess we want to make sure we're clear that they are running it and they are not allowing someone else to come in and rent space, per se, in their building under their umbrella, not have a license. Correct. Okay, so, if that would be and I would use, again, our partner, Spurwink, because now they're going to be having two places they could go. They could go down to the hospital, rent a place, and be in town, because they have a license. That I wouldn't be concerned with that if they partnered with the hospital, because they're licensed. But if somebody who's not licensed through our system comes to town and wants to work at CMCC and set up a facility and skirt the rules, I would have an issue. I'm not sure how we'd word that in the process, but, I just wouldn't want to see, where they were able to get away with, the food service doesn't belong to the hospital, okay? It's a classic example. It's a contract service they hire to come in and do what they do. But they don't have to meet the requirements or the rules or the working hours or anything else of the hospital because they're a food service. And I don't want to have somebody coming in under the hospital's umbrella and skirting the rules.
Well, thank you, Councilor Gallant. I mean, the food, Sodexo or whoever they have now at CM is certainly subject to health inspections and, the parameters of the contract, set up by the hospital. Yeah. Councilor Najin.
So just to kind of elaborate on that, the Division of Licensing and Certification by the Department of Health and Human Services licenses medical facilities. Those medical facilities are defined as hospitals, nursing homes, home health agencies. It continues. So what I would suggest is that we would just limit it to hospitals that are licensed as medical facilities under the Department of Health and Human Services. So if they hold a license as a hospital, then that counts those, as well as possibly some small satellite offices that would be in medical parks. But we don't even have an urgent care. We do? Yeah. Do we want to write it so it's just in the footprint of the hospital? I don't know. I'm just asking. Or are
Councilor,
we getting in the weeds too much?
Councilor Chittum.
Yeah, I'm glad you used that term in the weeds, because I think we can look at outcomes, potential outcomes, until the cows come home. I'm in favor of saying, if it's a hospital-authorized organization, if the hospital has even leased space to a organization and that organization is under contract to the hospital has its own self-interest to protect and preserve. And it would seem to me that rather than get into the knickers of the details, this council can, in fact, trust the hospitals to say, this is a good partnership, this isn't. The question is as to whether or not the city would license in addition to the hospital contract, I think is a valid question. But whether or not we say that Spurwink, for example, could or could not. I like the idea of expanding to the hospital footprint. It does open the door of how big is the campus of each of these hospitals, how far do their facilities extend. And I don't really want to go there. I think that in this particular case, we can solve the problem by saying if an organization is allied with a hospital on that hospital's grounds, then that would be permissible, despite the lack of any zoning authority. It would address the zoning question.
Councilor Harriman.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I would also add, just as another piece, that even if they were not getting a license from the city, they would still require a license from the state to be an SSP. So it's not like there would be no oversight at all. There would still be that other layer.
Councilor Stoll.
So the licenses for the hospitals, my first impression was just that the hospital, if they wanted to run an SSP, would run an SSP. Now we're starting to talk about the satellite business and then the whole footprint. And now I'm worried that now we're going to have more all over the city with all these different. So I really would want it to be one, like just not let the hospital decide. Like if the hospital staff wants to do this, they do that, but they still have to come to us for a license, correct? Like for the city. They can't just open it because it's in the ordinance that the hospital can do so. They would still have to come to us and we would have to approve a license, is that correct?
So with the current ordinance, they wouldn't be authorized because they're not in the correct zoning location. The ordinance speaks to any licensed provider, any licensed or certified SSP from the state would need a local license to operate.
Okay. So they still would have to come in front of us if they, yeah. That's tough, and that is getting into the weeds, but I wouldn't want to see a bunch popping up all over because that's part of the hospital's footprint. So that's my only concern.
Councilor Najin, did you have something?
No, not at the moment.
Councilor Glant.
Thank you, Mayor. So going back to Councilor Harriman's point that they can be licensed by the state, why are we doing this? We'll just let these guys be licensed by the state and be done. We can't have apples and oranges. We need to have the same thing for each organization. And I'm not for the hospitals having freelance, as Councilor stated, where they can just go to any little place they have a piece of land that they're leasing and have a couple doctors in there and they can do what they want to do. The footprint to me would be the main hospital. They could operate something out of there. And I think they would make us, something should say we should be made aware, if nothing else as a public service, the city, so we can let people know there's another location to go to.
Counselor Chittum.
Thank you. I'm comfortable, if we can define the hospital campus by street and say these are allowable zones, that gets rid of, we've got a satellite out at Mollison Way. If we can somehow define a specific geographic area centered around St. Mary's and Central Maine Medical Center and say that city licensed SSPs and CDC state licensed SSPs may operate in these zones. That addresses what started this conversation, and that is the oasis of permissible SSP locations downtown. That solves the problem. It eliminates the question of expansion into the hinterlands because it defines a specific geographic area.
How does the council feel about that idea? We're thumbs upping on that. Did you have something to add, Councilor Harriman?
Yes, I was going to suggest as a way to define those is to either use street addresses or parcel identification numbers, so that, to the councilor's points, that if, say, Central Maine has a satellite office on some other street somewhere, that would not be included. We would say either these street addresses or these parcel IDs.
Okay, yes, thank you. Sorry, councilors, how do we feel about this hospital idea? We're in agreement. Director Connor?
If I may?
Yes.
So, if I'm understanding, we are exempting hospital locations, and we're going to define those locations centered around the St. Mary's and CMMC campuses, their main campus area. Is that correct? So we're exempting them from this ordinance so long as it's on those campuses, or are we just saying we're including these areas in the ordinance, in the zoning portion of the ordinance? Is that correct?
Yes, we're
Okay.
including them
Okay.
in allowed zones.
I only asked because the original conversation was exempting hospitals, and then we went down the other route. So I just wanted to make sure I'm clear.
Okay. Councilor Chim, did you?
Well, I just want to confirm that this is a new zoning, period, that an SSP operating under the auspices of CMMC would still need to have a city license if this ordinance passes.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. Further, we're making wonderful progress here, councilors. I'm very proud of all of us. Further comments on zoning? Consider Councilor Harriman, yes?
This may be something that needs to wait for the mobile ordinance, but I think that we need to sort of define, so we have this currently defined zoning restrictions for brick and mortar locations, and I think that there could be an option that the mobile units are allowed to operate in slightly different locations, but maybe that is a conversation to just stick with when the mobile ordinance comes up.
I couldn't agree more, Councilor Harriman. What were the other, Councilor Najin, did you have something?
The only other
About
things,
zoning, or?
no, it's not.
Are we good on zoning, councilors, at this point? I think we're good on zoning. Councilor Najin, back to you.
Okay, so the only other things I wanted to bring up are in the good neighbor policy, there is some conversation about, for instance, I believe Council President Chittum had said, the good neighbor policy should apply to the whole city. And I think there's a challenge with identifying one who is actually a client at any given time. So like, let's say somebody does something on Pond Road on a Wednesday, and they were at an SSP possibly on a Monday, but you don't really know because they have HIPAA protections as well. I would like to see in the good neighbor policy possibly that we look at, making it so that it has a little bit of teeth, I think, in a way that's more enforceable. That's one piece. And then also making it more easy to kind of, the point of the good neighbor policy is we don't want to be using our police resources in order to respond to issues that may come up between neighbors. And 1,320 feet's a big space. So what I'm thinking is we might change that to a mutually agreed upon good neighbor policy that city staff supports in the original application, which we approve anyways. Because 1,320 feet from, let's say, Kosie's front door, right, is Kennedy Park. And how are you going to manage that? You're not going to be able to. And just like a bar, I mean, this is a bad example, but just like a bar, whatever happens in the parking lot of your bar might not be your fault, but it's your responsibility. So I think having just changing the language to basically say that a mutually agreed upon good neighbor policy that staff supports, that we then confirm with the license. Just because I think there's some specifics in here that might be difficult. 1,320 feet if you're backed up to a highway. You know what I mean? Like, it's just to allow staff that flexibility and also allow for these operations to come up with maybe better plans than we could, hopefully. Because ultimately what we're trying to do is have folks be comfortable with going to the service provider to say, I have this problem, and have that service provider resolve that problem before we're starting to use city staff to mitigate a lot of these things, including behavioral health issues with LPD. So just want to put that out there.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It certainly can't be the whole city, and I think what did you say it was 1320?
It's written at 1320, and there's some specifics in there that I think would be, like there's no definition of what a client is, right? And what time frames we're talking about.
Yeah.
I want to kind of tie it to, like, we obviously know footprint of the property. If you're on the footprint of the property and you're publicly using drugs, that's an issue. If you're consuming alcohol or being rowdy or whatever it might be. If you're disturbing people who are adjacent to you, that's an issue. And that's what the good neighbor policy is supposed to resolve. But, like, if I show up at, let's say, 199 Main Street at 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm in the parking lot and I do something, like, that isn't tied to the operator. And so I'm just thinking we kind of remove some of this loose definition and put in an even looser definition that basically says a mutually agreed upon good neighbor policy that staff recommends supporting, so that when the license comes to us, we look at it, we say, that's a great policy, or we say, what about this or what about that? Does that make sense for everybody?
Yes, thank you, Councilor Nugent. Yeah, I mean, because 13, I mean, that's like roughly quarter mile, right, Director?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that's a long ways. And when we're talking about good neighbor policy, we're really talking about what's happening on premises, across the street, down the street a little bit. What happens at a quarter mile is, yeah. I think we need to rein that in just a little bit and have something a little more reasonable. Councilor Chittum.
Thank you. I think that's an excellent idea. Councilor Najin, the quarter mile, I'll remind everybody, came from the warming shelter.
Homeless shelter.
The homeless shelter. And it was not debated at the length that this is. I still think that it's the responsibility of the SSP, any SSP, to impress on its clients, its patrons, this is the behavior we expect. And I'm not certain that we want to get into the details of how that behavior is enforced. Even if there's only one SSP provider in the area and this individual on Pond Road, thank you for choosing my neighborhood, is misbehaving, we have no way of saying that this person who is misbehaving is even a client of an SSP. So there has to be an amount of good faith effort put into this, and I think I like the idea of having the SSPs draft their own good neighbor policy and having the council and staff say, yeah, this makes sense. So rather than have us cram something down the throats of the providers, have them tell us what they think is a reasonable alternative. I think everybody knows what we're expecting. We want to see evidence that this information is being relayed to these people who are causing problems in society.
Would the council be amenable to changing ordinance, or changing the language in the ordinance to simply require the a good neighbor policy is to be determined by the licensee and staff? Yes, Councilor Najin.
I just wanted to look to you to see if there was anything in there that you think you need to carry over into the language that I'm talking about.
No, so my question to the council would be, you know, the verbiage in there gives some examples of they shall provide a good neighbor policy with things such as. Would it, if we just took out the within a 1,320-foot radius of the premises, if we just took that verbiage out, would the rest of the language suffice? It still gives the operator the ability to come with a plan, and it gives them some parameters of, hey, touch on these things. Would that suffice for the council if we just took that out?
I would also think that the participant piece, just because it's very difficult to determine who's a participant and who's not a participant, if it's falling within the space that we're expecting people to basically maintain good balance for, anybody in it is possibly a person that you need to address, whether or not they're a client or not, right? And I think that comes from kind of how the good neighbor policy is written by the organization and agreed with the city staff. You know, it's just that piece where it's like, yeah. Well, I guess the radius is part of that. So it's by neighbors resulting from the participants' failure to abide by the policy and if disturbances are not minimized. The reason why I bring this up specifically is because COSI wasn't open for 3 months when we were dealing with some pretty serious issues that were happening on that property. So those weren't even participants. Those are folks that were occupying space that COSI should have had better control over. And so that's why I'm kind of saying maybe we take out the participant language as well, to basically be like, hey, if it's within your footprint, you know, like maybe I put I'm not saying I'm going to do this. I won't do this. But, you know, if I go and put like an empty shock top in your parking lot, you're still going to pick it up, right? So, yeah.
So, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
No, after you, Director.
So maybe something along the lines of how participants and/or I'm trying to think of the word, but basically you wanting it to open it up to anybody that's on their property.
Yeah, basically, I mean, the thing is there's a culture that we already know among drug users where people who are seeking services are there, and then there are people who are present for the community, right? And sometimes those folks can be a problem too. And if they're occupying a space that can be, that basically makes a business owner be like, what am I going to do? That's what the good neighbor policy is for, right? That's just my thought on it. But.
I mean, that makes some sense to me. Councilor Gallant?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm agreeant with removing the boundary. I'm not with agreement to removing participant, because they shouldn't be responsible for anybody outside their building that's not getting services. Quite frankly, they're not the police. So if a bunch of druggies go up there and cause hate and discontent outside their building because they're all drugged up, that's not their problem. That's a police problem. They're going to call the police. If they have people out there that they just serviced and gave stuff to, and they're causing a problem, and we can trace that back, then that would be their problem, to go out there and say, hey, guys, listen, this is how it should be. You know, we're going to make them police of something that they really shouldn't have to be, in my opinion.
Any other thoughts? Councilor Harriman?
Yeah, I'm in favor of removing the distance requirement. The way I see it is that the requirement for a good neighbor policy is really just a thought exercise for the SSP to, you know, present. We're basically asking them to present us with a plan for what they're going to do to respond to certain things that happen around their facility. And the language in this may not be really legally enforceable, or at least as far as, you know, if this person is over here doing something, I don't know that it's going to fall under this, but it's really just It's to show the council and staff who are reviewing the application that they have thought about this, they have a plan for what to do if any of these issues happen, and that we trust that they will, that they'll execute that responsibly.
Excellent, thank you, councilors. So at this point, can I get the council's opinion whether to remove the distance and keep participant at this point? Okay, we are good with that. What's left to talk about? Councilor Najin, yes.
The only other thing I wanted to touch on was we've specifically written into the ordinance that the hours that the operations can function, prohibiting weekends. Is that correct?
Caught me off guard there. I'm looking for that now, but I believe
That rings a bell,
that
yes.
is that was in there, yes.
I'm in
With
favor.
with one
Sorry,
operator.
please continue, Councilor Najin.
Sorry,
No?
with one operator, I'd be comfortable with striking any of the hours for the operations. They have to announce that to the CDC and then stick to it. And so whatever hours that they would be comfortable running, I would be comfortable running with the one operator, so.
Yeah, that makes some sense. Councilor Chittum.
For Director Connors and all of ours, it's section 22-499-4 that specifies the hours of operation. And you're proposing that that be removed in its entirety, they be included in the operations plan that the SSP would submit with its license application.
Correct. Which would also be certified by the CDC as well.
I can certainly support that.
Are we in favor of that, councilors? Okay, all right. Councilor Najin, did we work through your list?
I don't have anything left.
Councilor Longchamps, yes.
I hate to bring this back up, and forgive me if I'm completely off, but I know the 1-for-1 is out, but the cap, because we said those were really two different things, we kind of overlooked that, and we didn't vote, thumbs up or thumbs down. So if it would be okay, I'm in favor of, I would like to have some sort of cap in there. I think Councilor Sol and Councilor Gallant, again, I don't think we have the majority that will agree to that, but that was not actually voted on.
I'm sorry. Madam Clerk, can you refresh my memory what we got a thumbs up on before?
Or there was a majority to keep the one-to-one language out of the ordinance, but that was it regarding the discussion for that. As was pointed out, sort of the discussion regarding cap versus ratio sort of was intermingled, but the thumbs up, for majority thumbs up, was to keep the one-to-one language out of the ordinance.
I guess, Councilor Chittum.
Yes, so I agree. We have not discussed a cap. I'm not in favor of a cap because I think each circumstance is unique and we ought not to bind the hands of the providers. However, if it requires, if a cap is required in order to get this ordinance passed, I would propose a cap that would be 100 or more, given that, well, let's say if we're going to talk a cap, I'm going to kick myself for saying that. I'm going to go back and look at myself, 100 or more as a cap. No, I don't think that works. 100, and that's just a number that it's a PFA. It's a pluck from air number. It anticipates that a typical user of fentanyl would be using 10 to 12 needles a day, and there's a 3-day weekend and another circumstance. So I just took the number there and doubled it to come up with 100 needles per visit.
Councilor, if I may.
Please.
So the state does have a cap. It's 100 per visit. Is that correct? Yes. So we have the state has a cap in place. I'm not in favor of making any changes to that at this point. I mean, just if the council would like. So I guess who is in favor of having a cap beyond what the state already has in place? Okay, there's not enough. Councilor Harriman, did you have your hand up?
I did want to touch on the licensing fee, and I know that I just searched through the document and the dollar amount is not in there because I know we usually put that in a different section of the code. I think it was proposed to be $550, and I just wanted to discuss that. I honestly would would like to see no fee. It's not really a money-making operation, but if there is a fee, I would think it should be more reasonable than that.
Councilor Longchamps.
Yes, I think it's completely acceptable and appropriate that there is a license fee. That's all I have to say, and I don't think lowering it should be an option.
Councilor Nagy.
Do we have the ability to waive license fees for business licenses, just out of curiosity?
My recollection from the language is that you do, but that's in the general section of the business licensing ordinance, and I'd have to look at that, Counselor, to refresh my memory.
I would be absolutely comfortable with keeping the fee with the ability to waive it if we so choose.
Councilor Chittum.
Thank you. That seems to make sense, but it opens us up on the council to all kinds of problems if we waive the fee for somebody we like and we don't waive it for someone we don't. When that first was proposed, it was $500, I believe, and it was for a license application. One of my early comments was, A, that seems to be too high for an organization that is not in business to make a profit and very often doesn't. And B, I would propose that a renewal license poses a relatively low burden on administration and staff. I do think the city ought to recoup some of its costs. So I would propose that we have an initial license fee of $50 and that there be no fee for a renewal license. Just throwing that out for discussion.
All right, do we have, we can talk about licensing fees, I think, for a long time. I would like to just kind of test the waters here. How does the council feel about a licensing fee of $50? And Councilor Chittum, did you say no fee for a renewal?
A renewal would have no fee.
So
that's correct.
Initial licensing of 50 and a renewal of 0. How do we feel about this? Okay, that does not seem to be consensus for that. Councilor Sol.
I think there should be a fee. I just don't know what that fee should be. What license did we compare it to? Do you remember? That fee?
The methadone clinic.
The methadone, and that's what they pay?
Correct. We took it right from their fee schedule.
Okay. Well, I'm good with the fee.
Councilor Harriman.
I think it's important to look at what the purpose of a licensing fee is. The way I see it is that it's to cover, to some extent, the time that it takes for staff to review a license. And I think we also need to consider the circumstances of the people who are applying for the license. So one difference between these two is that the methadone clinic bills insurance for their services, whereas an SSP is actually prohibited from charging any money for their services, and the only funding they receive is from the CDC based on the formula that they use. So to me, it seems like 500 is a little excessive. I would support the $50 and then 0 for renewals, because there will likely be few changes for a renewal.
Councilor Glant.
Thank you, Mayor. As we dig deeper in this hole, let's be realistic. We're going to end up supporting the SSP because we're going to have to. So it seems foolish to take money from them to give it back. So I think in some ways an application fee, which is what we're talking about, not a license fee, there's a difference. Because you might have 20 people apply, okay? It's not the same as having somebody with a license. I would support an application fee for somebody with the idea that if they were accepted, it would be given back. It would be refunded. If they did not get the license, we get to keep the money. It's kind of like rents, right? People put in, it's going to cost you $35 to get a rent because they're going to check your background and they want their money up front. And if they decide they want to rent to you, you don't get that $35 back. It's gone. And that's kind of how a lot of the rent structures are done now out there in our communities, right here in Lewiston. So, we want to make sure that they're really interested and we don't waste staff's time And we want the provided service because we need it in our community. So I think it should be an application fee, and if it's accepted by us and they get their license, that could be returned.
Thank you, Councilor Gallant. Madam Clerk, can you please remind us how fees work for licensure?
Sure. So it is a fee for the license. A few of them also have application fees, such as the tattoo, but that's pretty rare. Usually it's the fee for the license. It is paid at the time of the application, and it covers their license for 1 full year. So we don't do a refund process, as Councilor Gallant mentioned.
How does the council feel about $250 for the initial license?
Question in.
No, I understand. Councilor Nagy, back to you.
Thank you so much. So, a couple of things just real quick. One, what's a daycare pay for licensing per year?
I don't know those answers.
So we don't license daycares in Lewiston anymore. The state does that. But what we can do is take a look at what other communities are charging. And as the director was saying, we look at similar type businesses, but we also take a look at what the staff costs involved for processing that application, the administration of that application. Keep in mind that the application goes to the city clerk's office and we will review it. We will make sure that it's complete. But then we send that out to police, fire, and code, and they have to do their inspections, and they may have to go back several times. If they go the first time and they find some deficiencies for XYZ, then they'll point out an area of correction, then they'll have to go back. So we're not gonna bring a license typically to the council for review and approval if there's something still pending by one of those 3 departments. We want the applicant to fix that and address that if they can before it goes to the council for review and consideration. So it could be quite a bit of time to have several city inspectors going out there several times, and therefore the license fee typically would cover that roughly.
Gotcha. My 2 concerns are, 1, we want to cover our costs 100%, right? And 2, what message are we sending to businesses that are for-profit businesses that are trying to function in our community, or nonprofit businesses that have to pay fees as well? And so I just want to land on a balance there, and I don't know what that number is, but I do know that if I have to tell somebody who's paying a license fee to run a business in the city that the SSPs don't, they will probably be a little short with me. So.
Okay, well, I guess unless it appears that we should just maybe keep it the same unless there's consensus to lower it. Councilor Chittum, yes.
I'd like to hear back what the costs are to the city. I hear Councilor Najin that we need to cover our costs, and I agree with that to a certain extent. But I don't think that these costs can be punitive either. I think we also need to look at the type of license that's being issued, as to whether it's a for-profit business or a business that is relying, can't even bill insurances, and is relying on state taxpayer dollars to fund its operations. So I would like to have a report back on, how much does it cost to send fire, police, and code out for 1 inspection? Just ballpark. I don't need an extensive detailed analysis, but it's certainly more than $50. I grant that. Is it as much as 500? So if we could have that information next Tuesday would be ideal when we're discussing this, if that's possible.
So for clarification, as Councilor Harriman pointed out, the fees are not in the ordinance. The fees are in the policy manual, and that is 1 passage. So typically, we would bring a fee schedule to you at either the 2nd passage or the meeting after that, because keeping in mind, ordinances need first passage, final passage, and then 30 days to go into effect. And that 30-day time frame is when staff implement signage or whatever the requirements are from that ordinance, and one of them would be the license fee. So we'll either bring it back for final passage or the meeting after that.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Councilors, yes, we were talking a lot about fees. I'm not sure that we're making any headway. Councilor Gallant, did you have something?
Just real quick, does Spurwink already pay a license fee?
Not to the city of Lewiston for syringes.
Not about a business fee?
No, because I don't believe we have anything that's licensed. So the city has about 55 different categories of licensing, and I don't believe Spurwink offers any services that currently require a city license, like a restaurant or whatever, so therefore they don't have a license with us. Businesses in general, Counselor, are not registered with the city and pay a fee.
So most businesses don't pay fees. The lawyers pay fees.
No, right.
Okay, so I mean, you know, to me, we're gonna go chase someone down who's gonna do a service to the city, and we have hundreds of businesses that don't pay nothing. And you know, unless you're gonna make money, bars, marijuana, entertainment, that you can recoup, it doesn't seem fair to me we charge them anything because of that reasoning. Because a basic business doesn't require to pay fees to the city.
If I may, councilors, can I get a thumbs up or thumbs down if we should lower this fee?
Which one means lower and which one doesn't?
Should we lower the fee? A thumbs up for that. And, well, there we go. So I guess we were moving on.
Mr. Mayor, I would like
Yes,
still to
Councilor
have...
Chittum, you've
at
been
the-
recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the appropriate time, I'd like to have guidance from the city clerk on where these fees go. Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Chittum, please continue.
It seems to me, in my unofficial tally here, and I'll look to Director Connor to confirm or refute this, that we have dealt with the significant issues that have plagued this council for way too long. If that's the case, I would like to open the door to questions as to how some of the suggestions that I have consistently been making to this ordinance should be addressed.
1 second, councilors. Where are we at with everything in your
We have
notes?
touched on the four that I brought, the three additional, which were the hours of operation, the good neighbor policy, and the license fee. And the only one that we have not really spoke to yet is the mobile services, whether or not to keep it as prohibited under this ordinance with the expectation of it bringing it under a new ordinance, or allow it. So that was the only one that we hadn't touched on yet.
We're going to touch on that right now. So, councilors, are we in agreement that we're going to consider mobile services in a separate ordinance? Thumbs up for that.
We can do this again? Oh, boy.
I think we're going to be. We'll work on a different ordinance for that. You know, why have all the fun tonight, Director Connor? Councilor Glantz.
Well, you were going around asking anybody if they had problems, and then we didn't get all the way around a circle before we get into his.
What problems do you still see,
I have
Councilor
a problem
Glantz?
with Section 22-499 operating requirements, where it says participants must be under 18 years of age. We require 21 for alcohol, 21 for marijuana. I don't want to send a signal to school kids that they can get needles whenever they want. I trust them to look at individuals and determine what they feel is the right thing to be age-wise. But I think by saying 18 here opens Pandora's boxes to younger people who may see this or the word gets out. You know, I know that there are younger people getting needles, even younger than 18, quite frankly. And if they look at somebody and say, you look like you're 35 and they're 14, that's on them, it's not on us. I know they won't do that, but, you know, I just don't like 18 in there when all the other rules are 21.
You're saying that it should be 21 instead of 18, is that what you're saying? Okay. And how do councilors feel about this? Councilor Harriman?
I guess I just don't understand the rationale behind that. I mean, people can go to a pharmacy and buy syringes just off the shelf. This is talking about SSP services, which is for people who currently use and inject drugs, and you know, it's not a place where anyone can just go and say, I would like some needles, and they give them to you. You have to have a need and demonstrate that to them. So an 18-year-old can't just walk in and say, I'd like to have 25 needles, if they are currently suffering from addiction and they inject drugs, then that's another conversation. But I just don't really see the rationale when we're talking about SSP services here.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of changing it. I'm in favor of just leaving it alone. Councillor Chittum, did you have something?
The state already regulates this. I would advocate removing 18 simply because it's already covered by the state. If the state changes its guidelines and we have 18 in our ordinance, then there'll be a conflict, and that just creates more problems. So I would advocate removing it altogether.
Councillor Najin?
That's what I was going to suggest and ask as well. I believe the CDC has the guidelines about program participants. Number one, parental rights, that comes into, and it's funny that we're talking about like the age of consent over something that, you know, drugs are illegal. I just want to remind everybody that. But yeah, if we just remove,
Councillors, thank you.
if we remove the language so that, if we remove the language for any number that we've got in there that is just repeating what the CDC guidance is, that basically means that if the CDC guidance changes, we don't have to change our ordinance. So.
Yeah, no, makes perfect sense to me. Do we have, can I know how many councillors would like to just remove this?
Can we get clarification on what we're removing?
The licensee shall knowingly distribute syringes to participants under 18 years of age.
Oh, shall not, so is this 22-499 subsection 4?
3.
Okay, I must be looking at the, I'm looking at tonight's council meeting packet. Number 3 talks about preventing people from injecting illicit drugs on or near the premises.
Are you on 22-499?
Yes.
I'm looking at the packet that was printed out.
I'm looking at the packet that was on the website.
Nonetheless, this is what we're talking about. The licensee shall not knowingly distribute syringes to participants under 18 years of age. The idea is that we would remove it in the since that's covered under CDC guidelines. Okay. Councillor Najin, did you have something else to add?
Just really quickly, I think one of the reasons why that line was in there possibly, and I just want to verify this, is that that would be the ability to actually either suspend or revoke a license. We have language in here that basically says that they need to be in compliance with the CDC requirements and guidelines, right?
Correct.
Okay, and we can use that tool if somebody's abusing?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
If I may, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Councilor Harriman, I believe you were looking at the language that the clerk provided with the highlights for the one-to-one language. On the back side of that attachment, 22-499, number 3 did speak to what you were talking about, but the actual ordinance, that attachment was what we're speaking to tonight.
Okay, yeah. Either way, I mean, this is the packet that I just downloaded today from the website, but yeah, either way, we're talking about the 18 thing.
We absolutely are. Councillor Glant, did you have anything further to add?
I'll go back to earlier. Why don't we just say we follow CDC and end this thing?
Right.
Because you guys keep referring back to the CDC on 75 or 80% of this whole policy. So why do we have to have our own if we're not going to make changes for the city?
Thank you, Councillor Glant. Councillor Chittum, did you have something?
2 points. One, to answer Councillor Gallant, one of the provisions of this ordinance, if it passes, is it gives the city authority to do inspections. That alone is worth the ordinance. In reference to the 18, there are several references in the ordinance to 18 years of age, and I know we spoke specifically about one, but I'm hoping that we would remove all references to 18 in the ordinance and rely on the CDC to guide the SSPs.
Can I get a thumbs up for that, councillors? Councillor Najin, did you have something else?
Just real quick, like I don't want to divide everybody up on we've worked really well so far together. I don't care if we're repeating something that the CDC guidelines are already there either. You know what I mean?
Okay, thank you, Counselor. So at this point, do we, so we are now, what's currently on the table, if you will, to remove language talking about age since it's already covered by the CDC? Can we get a thumbs up for that? Those in favor of that? Okay, I guess we're just going to keep it as is. Thank you, counselors. What other concerns have not been addressed? Counselor Chittum?
I'm looking around, and I'm the only hand up.
I was also looking around, and I saw your hand, yes.
I have, since day one, been proposing what I consider non-substantive changes to this ordinance. Changes to make it more readable, changes to make it more user-friendly, changes to minimize the chance that it would run afoul or in conflict with state laws and rules, changes in bad spelling, bad grammar, bad punctuation. I really hate to tie up the council's time to address these issues. I've distributed to all of you and to the public several versions of the same information. Every time a new version comes out, I have to make those same comments that this comma's in the wrong place, only is misapplied here. I would like to know how to resolve these in the interests of crafting good, readable, syntactic legislation without tying up the council in doing that. I will tell you that Director Connor and I met with the city attorney for 3 hours to try and attempt that very thing. Unfortunately, we got waylaid and we started delving into questions of this is a substantive matter and this is not a substantive matter. So the commas that I have listed throughout here are still in the wrong place, and I hate like hell to tie up our valuable time on the days to fix something like that. So I would like some guidance as to how I can work with Director Connor and staff to craft language that meets the standard tests of basic written English.
Thank you.
Guidance, please.
Thank you, Councillor Chittum. Madam Clerk, what would you suggest for fixing grammatical and spelling mistakes?
Sure, so.
Sorry, please.
Sorry, so Counselor Chittum, as he said, has distributed it to the council before, and we brought copies to the last meeting for any member of the public who wanted to look at it, and as Counselor Chittum said, it's primarily grammatical in nature, wordsmithing changes. So the process would be that Counselor Chittum could bring this up as an amendment, as a blanket amendment. So we're not going line for line, word for word, section by section, comma by comma, but as a whole, recognizing that these are grammatical and wordsmithing changes, if the council concurs with that, and I don't want to make any assumptions, but if the council as a whole concurs that these are grammatical, then Counselor Chittum at the next meeting could make a motion for an amendment to adopt all of these in full. And then the council would discuss it and vote accordingly.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I have a question. So staff is free to, run spell check and fix commas at any time. Is that correct?
We will fix obvious typos. For example, in the language that you got before, the letter W was missing from the word review, just an obvious typo, so we went ahead and fixed that. Counselor Chittum in his wordsmithing proposals, for example, in several sections wants to move the word only to in front of a phrase versus behind a phrase. Those are changes that we're not going to make. But anything that's an obvious typo, misspelling, whatever, we can fix those because this is a clerical error.
Correct. Okay. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, Councilor Harriman.
Thank you. I like the suggestion from the clerk. My only concern would be, so I've read through all of the proposed changes. They all make sense to me. My only concern would be if any of them, if making those changes has any legal implications, and I would just want to make sure that that the new language is approved by the city attorney just because if we take out these words here that might seem redundant or unnecessary to us, it might have some meaning in a legal context, and I just don't want to open us up to more liability that way. But as far as readability and just general understanding, all of your suggestions made sense to me, Councilor Chittum, and I would be fine with reviewing them as a block as long as they pass legal muster.
Councilor Longchamps?
Yes, I too would, I like the suggestion from our city clerk, and I think once we have basically approved it, which we all have looked at it several times, then bring it to the attorney, because I think sitting there for 3 hours or plus trying to hash out where commas should and shouldn't be is a complete waste of taxpayers' money.
Councilor, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Were you finished, Councilor?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Councilor Gallant?
Will this delay our first and second reading?
No, it shouldn't, Counselor, because on Tuesday night, and let me just sort of expand on the question, is that the process that staff would recommend for Tuesday night is that, keep in mind, the first item for action for this agenda item on Tuesday night is going to be the motion that was carried over from the last meeting, which is the one-to-one, which you need to vote on because that was carried over. But you have the discussion this evening, and so you kind of know how you're going to vote on that. So that's step one. The second step will be most likely to do an amendment to approve in blanket form everything that you discussed tonight that is of substance. And so the staff will type all this up as a one recommended or one consolidated amendment for you. And then the group's already discussed it. You could certainly discuss it again, take public comment, et cetera, et cetera. But then the staff recommendation would be, that would be an amendment as a blanket to include all of these changes. So that would be the second amendment. That's what's going to be printed in your book because the full group here reviewed this big amendment. And then after those are done, Councilor Chittum could on the floor bring up his grammatical wordsmithing amendments, and then the council could vote on that as a block. Those are not considered substantial, but you're still in the first passage phase. You haven't achieved first passage yet. So all three of those can be done on Tuesday night if the group agrees to that. And then once that's done, we would move to final passage on the 18th of November.
So to play devil's advocate, on the 18th of November, somebody got a period in the wrong place or misspelled something, and we have to change it then, and it dies, correct? We have to go to another process?
No, because it wouldn't be substantial. That amendment could take place on the 18th, be adopted, and be incorporated into the ordinance as a whole. But if on November 18th, someone makes a motion to change the one-to-one language again, or something like that, then that's a main crux of the ordinance, and you would have to repeat the final passage again.
Yeah, I don't want to be chasing down the road for commas and periods.
Sure.
Because somebody misses something on the very last night. The last night, all I want to hear is, who wants to make this happen, raise your hand, make it go away. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Gallant. It seems like we have a plan way forward. Councilor Najin, did you have some thoughts?
Yeah, just really quickly, when all of this gets changed, I'm sure there'll be a version of improvements that you want to see. And I know that you print those up and bring them into council, but is there any way that we could get those in advance so that they could come out in an amended packet? Just because if it's a substantial body of changes, I just think that having that piece could be helpful.
Sure, so Councilor Chittum has emailed out his proposed changes. Past practice, Councilor, though, is that if an amendment or a set of amendments is from one councilor, we do not put that in the packet because we have no idea if the rest of the body is in agreement to that. And if we put individual amendments, you could have 7 sets of proposed amendments in every agenda item for every meeting. It gets messy and who's on first kind of thing. The difference will be, though, is because you all as a body tonight discussed a whole bunch of amendments as a group, staff will put those amendments in the packet for you because you've all sort of seen it, discussed it, hashed it through.
Okay, Counselor, well, Chittum, if I may, well, I guess you first, and then I have some thoughts.
Thank you. Yes, I have characterized many of my changes as grammatical, syntactical, punctuation, spelling, and that sort of thing. But there is a continuum, and I'm going to cite an example here. You've all seen this because I've distributed it to staff as well as council. And I'm going to be looking at a definition under section 22492. It's the definition of syringe services. As written, it says, and I quote, "Syringe services includes, but is not limited to," there's that bugaboo, "the furnishing of new syringes and the exchange of used syringes, referrals, and educational materials about prevention, treatment, and proper disposal of syringes." That's not a spelling error. Does it rise to the level of a one-for-one exchange discussion? I don't think so. But my observation on reading this is that if I go out into Kennedy Park and hand out literature pertaining to educational materials about prevention, treatment, and proper disposal of syringes, I would be in violation of this ordinance because I'm not licensed as an SSP. So when we define syringe services to include those other things, I'm not making the argument now, I'm simply pointing out this is a particular section that is not a spelling error, but it is careful craftsmanship. And I don't know I can't really put that in an omnibus amendment, as the clerk has suggested. I can go through here and pull out those things that, in my view, are minor in nature that correct spelling and put punctuation in the proper place. But there are a whole raft of other things that make it good legislation as opposed to okay legislation, or even worse, confusing legislation. At the last meeting, I spoke about the language that says mobile units may not be licensed under this ordinance. Director Connor and I both had positions that we understood, but they were conflicting in terms of their interpretation of that language. So,
Counselor, if I may.
If you may what?
Well, please
Shut me up?
continue. Counselor, I value everyone's input, including yours. Counselors, so I think we do have a way forward. Counselor Chittum, if you could have legal review the changes to make sure that there's not, that the changes that you're proposing are going to work as intended, and then you can present that as an amendment at the next meeting, and we can vote on that as a full slate of changes. Is that what I was hearing from you, Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I think we do have a way forward here, and I do appreciate all the counselors, including yours, Counselor Chittum, the time that we've spent on this. We will have something of beauty here in the end. Counselor Gallant, did you have anything else?
I just want to make sure that no matter what, the first reading gets done next meeting. And if it means skipping your understanding and verbiage because somebody may not understand it, I say just leave it alone till you get around to the next time when we change something, and then hand it and go through from there. Because there's some of the things you're proposing that I read, I might have questions about, which then causes what we just went through. So what he did, I won't accept as blanket. Nothing personal, I just don't. His interpretation and Director Connors, and a classic example is mobile units may not be licensed under this ordinance. That's pretty clear, except to you, because you think it could be longer or bigger than that, or it could be misunderstood. So I don't want to be wordsmithing things to a point it's going to be a 16 grade level when most of the people are 12th.
So
That's why I have a concern.
no, if I may, counselors, so this change would still need to be voted on, and when the amendment comes up for a vote, counselors are free to propose suggestions, I'm sure. Counselor Gallant, yes.
Are we able to do that, City Clerk? If it's a one big bill, one big bill, we able to pick it apart, or do we have to accept it as it is?
No, then you could make a motion to amend the proposed
that's
amendment.
correct.
Yes, sir.
Which gets us in that same rat hole we're in right now.
Well, and councilors would be able to vote at that time, and this would, and it's not going to delay anything, right? Madam Clerk, will still be under first reading.
No, that's not true.
Yes, it will.
The grammatical
Right,
changes?
yes. Like, you're just so I understand, so, we're gonna be, voting, we're gonna be picking up the one-to-one, we're gonna finish the vote on that. We're going to be, and then all of these changes that we talked about are already going to be there since we've substantially talked about it.
Well, they're going to be in your packet as a handout, and a motion would have to be made to amend
Right.
the draft ordinance and incorporate all those officially.
Okay,
Yep,
yes.
yep,
And then councilors could make further amendments to that, such as what Councilor Chittum is proposing.
Yes, sir.
And that would all still be first reading. So I don't think it's going to, it's not going to delay anything. There'll be certainly some discussion, but yes.
I don't agree.
Nonetheless, that will be the process. Basically, councilors can propose amendments on the floor.
I agree. The problem being is if we shoot one of those down, we're done with our first reading.
I'm sorry,
Now
say
it
that
becomes a
again?
major change again. Okay? Am I not correct with that? If he writes something and a majority of us don't agree with it and we want to have it amended and it has substance, does that not shoot down the first reading?
In the bulk amendment for the wordsmithing and,
Well, he's not wordsmithing, he's changing paragraphs.
okay,
To word to a way that he understands best.
okay.
So that's not commas and things like that. That's a rewrite.
So if I may, Councilor Glant, I think what and correct me, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Madam Clerk. What the clerk is saying is that any changes will need to be approved. But are they substantive changes? I don't believe that anything that while they are important, I don't believe that anything Councilor Chittum is proposing will change the basic crux of the ordinance, and it would also be covered under first reading. Am I saying that correctly, Madam Clerk?
Right, and I'd also remind you, Counselor, that in this council meeting setting, well, not this meeting, but in council meeting settings, staff is advisory only. The power 100% lies with the council. And if the council ever disagrees with a recommendation of staff, the council as the body are the ones in charge, and you could certainly vote to appeal that. So, for example, if staff said, we feel this is a substantive change and needs to repeat first passage, the council could vote amongst themselves to determine if they feel it's substantial or not, to move forward or to repeat first passage. Because staff's role, especially mine as the parliamentarian, I mean, you hear the parliamentarian's ruling, but that's actually an incorrect term. It's just advice, excuse me, an advisory. But the power and authority always lies with the body, and you guys can overturn and overrule majority rules.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
So the short answer is no, it doesn't have to be delayed, correct?
Yeah.
Say again?
The short answer is no, it doesn't have to be delayed necessarily.
Okay. And I'm sure you all read his changes, including you, Mr. Mayor, which I doubt. Okay?
Thank you, Councilor Glant. Any further comments before we wrap this up? Director Connor, do you have a further comment?
If I may, I just want to briefly recap, and I'd like to quickly summarize the directions that you've given us tonight.
Please.
So for the one-to-one exchange, obviously that's already on the table for the council meeting, but we're going to keep that out of the ordinance. Related to the number of licenses, we're going to change it to one licensee with up to 2 locations. Regarding the zoning and buffers, adding the hospitals and defining the geographic location around St. Mary's and CMMC. Related to the hours of operation, remove the restricted hours and weekends and regulate the SSPs based off their own hours that they present. Regarding the mobile services, keep it prohibited with the understanding that it will be coming up on a second ordinance. Regarding the good neighbor policy, remove the radius in the language. And then regarding the license fees, we're going to keep the ordinance language as it is. Do I have it summarized correctly?
Nice job.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Director. Councilors, I appreciate everything. Thanks for being here. Staff, thank you so much. I think we're calling it a night. Have a wonderful evening, Lewiston.